Hello, ladies. Once we reach our fabulous 50s, traveling becomes more than just moving from place to place. It's about enjoying life, feeling comfortable, and still looking stylish. But let's be honest, packing for a trip can sometimes feel overwhelming. What to bring, how to stay chic yet comfortable, and making sure nothing essential is left behind. In today's video, I'll be sharing practical travel tips, especially for women over 50, from smart luggage choices and must have accessories to beauty essentials and timeless outfit ideas that work on the go. If you find these tips helpful, don't forget to share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more inspiring content just for you. Number one, smart travel gear for women over 50. When it comes to traveling after 50, I've learned that the luggage you choose can completely change the way your trip feels. In my younger days, I thought any suitcase would do, but after a few frustrating trips with broken wheels and bags that left me sore, I realized smart travel gear is a true investment in peace of mind. At this stage of life, comfort and practicality are as important as style. A sturdy hardshell suitcase with four smooth spinner wheels is a must. It glides beside you with ease through crowded airports or uneven sidewalks. And let's not underestimate weight. Even if we're not dragging bags up staircases anymore, lifting them into a car trunk or onto an airline scale can be a challenge. That's why I always recommend lightweight but durable materials. Personally, I like traveling with one reliable check-in and one versatile carry-on. The larger bag lets me pack everything I want, from extra outfits to an extra pair of shoes, while the carry-on is my safety net if the main bag gets delayed. Inside that carry-on, I always tuck a personal item like a backpack with compartments or a chic tote that slides securely over the handle. That simple feature keeps your shoulders pain-free and your hands free. And hidden inside, a tiny handbag is my grab-and-go essential, just big enough for passport, phone, and wallet when I don't want to haul everything around. Here's a mini hook. Imagine boarding the plane, juggling ticket and purse, feeling stressed. Now imagine every item in its place, your suitcase rolling effortlessly. That calm is what smart luggage gives you. I'd love to know, are you a carry-on only woman, or do you enjoy the freedom of checking a bigger bag? Share in the comments. Your tip might inspire another traveler. And remember, luggage is just the start. Next, we'll talk about the clever accessories that turn a good trip into a truly stress-free one. Number two, travel accessories that make life easier. Luggage may be the foundation, but what truly keeps a trip stress-free are the little accessories that solve problems before they even start. Think of them as your personal safety net. One of my favorites is a compact travel steamer. Wrinkled clothes can ruin even the best outfit. And while hotel irons are hit or miss, a foldable steamer works every single time. Another must-have for me is a good sleep mask. After 50, quality rest is precious, and blocking out the light on a plane or in a hotel room makes all the difference. Choose one with eye cavities so it doesn't press on your lashes. Trust me, it's a game changer. A lightweight scarf or cashmere wrap is another simple hero. It works as a blanket on a cold flight, a stylish accessory when you arrive, and even a pillow in a pinch. Then there are small items that seem ordinary but turn into lifesavers: a set of packing cubes to keep clothes organized, a silicone mat for hot hair tools so you can pack them without worry, and a foldable tote bag in case you come home with more than you left with. And don't forget health essentials. I always carry a small pouch for daily medication, vitamins, and a few band-aids because nothing is more inconvenient than hunting for a pharmacy in a new city. Here's a mini hook. Picture yourself landing at your destination, slipping on your wrap, pulling out your perfectly organized toiletry bag, and knowing everything is exactly where it should be. That feeling of ease is what accessories give you. I'd love to know, what's the one small item you refuse to travel without? Share it in the comments. Your idea may be the exact solution another woman has been searching for. And now that we've covered the gear and accessories, it's time to talk about another essential part of every trip: the beauty and self-care items that help us look and feel our best no matter where we go. Number three, beauty and self-care. Essentials for women over 50. Beauty and self-care on the road are not about vanity. They're about comfort, confidence, and taking care of the skin and body that carry us through every adventure. Packing skincare is always my top priority because changes in climate, airplane air, and hotel water can make mature skin feel dry and tired. I always bring a travel size moisturizer rich in hydration, a gentle cleanser, and of course, sunscreen. Sunscreen is non negotiable. I prefer the stick versions because they don't spill and fit easily in a handbag. Another favorite is a hydrating lip balm with a touch of color. It instantly brightens the face without needing heavy makeup. For fragrance, instead of carrying bulky bottles, I suggest mini rollerballs or even solid perfumes. They slip easily into a purse, and you don't have to worry about liquid restrictions at the airport. When it comes to makeup, my philosophy is simple: less but effective. A lightweight foundation or tinted moisturizer, a brow pencil, and a neutral lipstick are usually enough to feel polished without overpacking. And here's a tip: keep a small pouch pre packed with your travel essentials so you never forget anything. Beyond beauty, I always carry a little wellness kit, vitamins, calcium, or supplements I take daily. It may not sound glamorous, but having those on hand keeps your body balanced when you're in a new environment. Mini hook. Picture yourself waking up after a long flight, taking 2 minutes to refresh your skin, swipe on a bit of tinted balm, and spritz a light fragrance. Suddenly, you don't just look ready for the day, you feel it. That's the magic of self care on the go. I'd love to hear what's the one beauty or skincare item you would never leave behind? Share it in the comments. Your tip might be the key for another traveler. Now that we've covered the essentials for health and beauty, let's turn to something equally important: what to wear. Because when style meets comfort, every journey becomes a little more enjoyable. Number 4, travel outfits and style tips. Clothing is where style meets practicality, and after 50, that balance becomes even more important. On the road, I've learned that the right outfit can make you feel confident, comfortable, and prepared for anything. My number one travel companion is a soft wrap or oversized cardigan. It feels like a blanket on the plane, yet looks polished enough to wear to dinner once you arrive. Cashmere or modal blends are ideal, lightweight, breathable, but still cozy. Jeans often get a bad reputation for travel, but the right pair can be incredibly comfortable. Look for soft, stretchy denim that doesn't pinch at the waist. Paired with a crisp blouse or a tunic, jeans transform easily from airport casual to city chic. Another favorite of mine is loungewear sets made from elevated fabrics. Matching tops and bottoms create a put together look without sacrificing comfort. And here's the secret: each piece can be worn separately, giving you more outfit options from fewer items. Shoes are always tricky, but comfort must come first. Slip on sneakers with cushioned soles are perfect for long walks, and I always pack a pair of stylish flats or loafers for evenings out. A simple trick I love is replacing laces with elastic or no tie options. It saves time at security and makes shoes easy to slip on and off. And don't forget accessories. A lightweight scarf not only elevates your look, but doubles as a cover up or even a quick layer when the weather shifts. Jewelry also plays a role. Just one statement necklace or a pair of elegant earrings can take a simple outfit from casual to classy without adding bulk to your bag. Mini hook. Imagine stepping off a long flight, slipping into a chic cardigan, comfortable jeans, and elegant flats, and heading straight to a cafe. You look pulled together, yet you're as comfortable as if you were still at home. That's the beauty of smart travel outfits. I'd love to know your secret weapon. What's the one outfit you rely on for long trips? Share it in the comments. Your idea might inspire another woman to pack smarter. And while clothes and accessories keep us stylish, there's one more piece of the puzzle we shouldn't ignore: technology. Because the right gadgets can make travel smoother, safer, and a whole lot more enjoyable. Number 5, tech and smart gadgets for travel. The last piece of the travel puzzle is technology. It may not be glamorous, but the right gadgets can save you time, stress, and even money. One of my absolute must haves is a reliable power bank. After 50, I find myself relying on my phone more than ever for maps, hotel confirmations, even health apps. Running out of battery in an unfamiliar place is not just inconvenient, it can feel unsafe. That's why I love compact chargers with MagSafe or built in cables, so I don't have to carry extras. Another item I never skip is a retractable multi charging cable. With one cord, I can charge my phone, my tablet, or even my e reader. It keeps my bag lighter and my hotel room less cluttered. Speaking of hotel rooms, have you ever noticed how outlets are never where you need them? A small travel extension cord with multiple ports is a quiet hero. It lets me charge several devices at once and even powers a hair tool if necessary. For entertainment, I always bring noise canceling earbuds or lightweight headphones. They make flights feel calmer and help me stay rested, even if the person next to me is wide awake. And if you love to read, consider a Kindle or an iPad mini, lighter than carrying books. With fonts you can adjust for tired eyes. Mini hook. Picture yourself sitting in a hotel room, your phone at 100%, your e-reader loaded with books, your earbuds silencing the world outside, while all your devices charged neatly in one spot. Instead of worrying, you're relaxed, fully charged, and ready to enjoy your trip. That's what smart tech does. It gives you freedom, comfort, and peace of mind, letting you focus on the joy of the journey instead of the stress of logistics. I'd love to know, what's your number one gadget you can't travel without? Share it in the comments because your tip might be exactly what another woman needs for her next journey. And now that we've covered gear, accessories, beauty, outfits, and gadgets, let's bring it all together in one final message, a gentle reminder of what travel is truly about. Traveling after 50 isn't just about moving from one place to another. It's about creating memories, staying comfortable, and feeling beautiful at every stage of the journey. The right luggage, smart accessories, thoughtful self-care, comfortable outfits, and helpful gadgets are not just things we pack. They are tools that let us enjoy the experience fully, without stress or worry. More than anything, traveling reminds us that age is not a limitation, but an invitation to explore with more wisdom and appreciation. Mini hook. Imagine your next trip where everything is simple, organized, and you feel free to enjoy every moment. That's the kind of travel we deserve. If you enjoyed these tips, please give this video a like, share it with a friend who might need some inspiration, and don't forget to subscribe so we can continue this journey together. And now, I'd love to hear from you. What's your next travel destination? And which of these ideas will you try first? Share in the comments below because your story could be the spark that encourages another woman to take her next adventure.